Me and Luke have spent an hour and a half or so talking about the difference of civilization and culture, going into Top Gun and Twin Peaks, politicians, kind of taking a detour into pain and personal development and grief, and then coming up against around the bend into food, real food, and what that is, and how that is also a way of segregating people, really. And then coming full circle, ending on Dolly Parton. So enjoy this very meandering conversation, but a really lovely conversation. I am so happy to get to spend time with Luke, and I hope you feel the same way. So dive in. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Definitely doing better than the last time we talked. I am no longer on um, pain medication, so that's good. Just when we talked, I had been recovering from a surgery, so
Yeah.
um, a little uninhibited.
So now were you uninhibited, or are you more uninhibited now?
Well, I don't know. Probably more inhibited now, but I don't know. We'll
Bummer.
see.
It's
Yeah.
kind of fun
Oh yeah,
when you
definitely.
let rip. Um, I was actually listening to you and Eyal in Deep Dive,
Oh,
headed into town this morning.
oh. So yeah, I was going to ask you how you have been. So it sounds like you have been in that headspace today.
Yes, today I've been in work mode today.
Ah,
I went into town and had, well, kind of back to back meetings, but with the same people, and then other people joining in through Teams. And then we had lunch together. So that was good. And then I biked to the grocery shop. I bought what we in Sweden call ostbricka, which means cheese tray. Basically,
mm,
it's a thing in the family. So me and my eldest, who doesn't live here anymore, she came and we set up ostbricka in the sofa with different cheeses and hummus and olives and crackers and lots of fruit and vegetables. And
oh,
we
that's
watched
lovely.
we watched Top Gun.
Oh, the
Be-
the new movie?
no, the old movie, because
Ah,
Sunday we're going to watch the new movie.
yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And she hadn't seen the original Top Gun. I actually saw it again a couple of months ago because one of my friends said, "Oh, it's my favorite movie. I watch it at least once a year." And I went, "What? Why would you watch Top Gun?" But it's not bad to be that old of a movie with that kind of, still quite a lot of effects. I mean, they are in planes all the time and stuff. It's not bad. Some old movies from the 80s and stuff are like no, you kind of see the effects, and today you're so used to it being seamless that it's like you can't tell at all.
Yeah, the old movie magic is not as magical as it used to be. Some
No,
things hold up, some things not so much.
precisely, and it's a big shift. Some things really do hold up, and other things you kind of go, no, it doesn't fly anymore. So we did that, and then because I didn't even know they'd made a new Top Gun, but then some friends of mine posted a selfie of them coming out from the movies, having watched Top Gun Maverick in is it 4XD or 4DX? I don't know. Which
I
is
don't
like
know.
3D, but 4D because it's like they have like 19 senses involved. So chairs can be shaking and there can be
Oh,
mist as they're,
oh, that's
flying
super
through
cool.
the clouds and smells and I don't know what. So it's like, we're going to that.
Very cool.
And I went, oh, well, why not? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was at maybe Disneyland or something that they had something like that a long time ago that I went to.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, that's an immersive experience for sure.
I will let you know. Next time, I'll let you know how it is. But so far, I'm really looking forward to it. So we'll see. We'll see if it is, because it can be kind of cheesy. I've been to one of those IMAX thing where it's like, chairs start to shake. It's like lying on a really bad massage chair. And you go, no, this really doesn't work. You know what the real deal is, and then no, just don't. But maybe.
Yeah, I some movies can really pull you in, and I can see if it's already a good film and you're really engrossed in it, that you could lose yourself in it. But if you're kind of coming out of the experience, at times where stuff happens where
Yeah,
you're
jolted.
not,
Yeah,
um, it brings you back into the real world, and you like exit the screen, then it
yeah,
can be like, oh right,
yeah,
I'm sitting in
yeah.
a
I'm just watching
poor
this. I'm not
massage
in
chair.
it. Yeah, yeah, in
Um,
precisely. So, do you like movies or films or
I
TV
do.
series?
Um, I have a friend who's very, very into them, and she has definitely helped uh, broaden my knowledge of films. But I know that as far as seeing like classic films go, I'm pretty behind, behind, I would say. Oh yeah, have you seen this? No. Have you seen this? No. Um, I do like film and TV, and I really like watching things that I can analyze and deconstruct and take real life lessons from and stuff
So, give me an
from.
example.
So um, I've been obsessed with Twin Peaks, just with different interpretations of
Okay. So
uh,
that is something I was kind of the age that you were supposed to be when it came out, that you were supposed to follow it. And I was like, no, just do not get it. It's just weird. It's just don't
yeah,
get it. And
it
I've
is
like
weird.
never even tried since then.
Yeah, um, yeah, it's odd. It took me a while. Friends kind of introduced me to it, and I probably would not have started it had they not introduced me to it. And there are definitely parts where I'm like, this. Mm, there's this pull between two, I think, writers and directors. There's I can't remember his last name, but I think Robert um, is one
Something.
of something, and David Lynch. And David Lynch is more on the metaphorical, like let's put in um, like Taoist and spiritual concepts, and uh, Robert. It's not. Hmm. Yeah, I can't. Maybe I think his
It
last
will
name is
come.
Frost, so it's not Robert. I need to look this up so that we get this right here.
Because
Um,
Robert Frost kind of didn't
is
do
a poet.
movies.
Not a,
Yes,
he
he
was
didn't do
long
movies.
before movies.
So
Yeah,
the
it's like
road less traveled was not movies for,
in
or actually that was the road
Washington
less
State.
traveled for him.
Um, so let's see. Yeah, I gotta get this. I gotta get this right. Let's stop. Um,
We've got time.
Mark Frost. Okay,
Mark Frost.
Mark Frost. That's Mark Frost. I believe had worked more in kind of like sitcom kind of areas, and so he was more responsible for. Uh, I would like to think some of the more odd interpersonal things that happened, and some of the dialogue that I think is a bit odd and doesn't hold up, um, but overall I like a lot of the concepts that are sort of alluded to and in the way that it's not handing you these lessons, it's showing you sort of like these are things that happen, um, and you can draw your own conclusions about
Conclusions. Yeah.
those, and um, that has led to people on all different sides of like the political spectrum going, well, he must agree with me, and
Mm,
and it's like, well, I
maybe.
we don't know. He
Yeah.
doesn't talk about those kinds of things, so
No.
um, and recently I've been watching Atlanta, which
I don't know that.
is similar in some ways, that it's presenting things and can be quite funny at times, but is also pretty serious in the things that it uh, brings up and highlights. Um,
But that's a new
phenomenon.
series.
Yeah, I think it started in 2015,
Hmm.
2016.
I
Um,
don't think I've ever heard of it.
I highly recommend.
I'll
But
have
it's
to go.
also, I think, an American thing. It's very much a commentary on life in America. So,
But somehow the American thing kind of turns into maybe not global, but at least European thing.
mm.
I mean, it's
Well,
ridiculous. We know the name of the presidents of the US better than I know the names of even the Swedish statsminister, but she is Magdalena Andersson. But it's like, it's actually quite funny how American tilted so much of the Western world is. Just fascinating. If you
yeah.
like really start to think about it. It's like, why do I know the names of presidents of the US when I have a hard time remembering the names of the Indian dude and the Chinese dude and it's like those countries are bigger. Maybe not economy wise. I don't really know. Probably getting there.
Population, yeah, definitely.
Population, definitely, 3, 4 times the size of the US. But yeah,
Well, it's true. I'm sure no lack of as a whole the country going, look at us, look at us, look at us.
there is a
Um,
little bit of that from the
just a
US. Let's
little
just
bit
say a
of that,
little bit, yes.
and it
Was it
doesn't.
you that I spoke to about that? How there are so many really good podcasts, that speak about stuff that is global. It's valid throughout. And they just speak about it from an American standpoint. They just say that, yes, this is really a problem in the US. And I'm going, what do you mean it's a problem in the US? It's a global issue. Don't. And it's like podcasts that have a global audience. Why do you keep on just doing that thing, that America? It's like, no, this is not an American thing. You can say in the US we see it from this way, and I know that in the UK or in China or wherever, but broaden the scope. It just
Yeah.
fascinates me.
Well, I can't speak for necessarily those podcasts, but I know that I have. talked about issues like on Twitter and tried to have a universal scope and gotten this sort of like, you know, well, you're in America and you don't know what it's like in my country. It's not like that here. And so it's like, well,
Yeah, damned if you
okay,
do,
well,
damned if you don't.
well, so well, I don't know. I don't know. But then again, I also am not somebody who is doing a like hosting a podcast about serious issues that, you know,
And I
where there
mean, I
maybe
was
is more
listening
of
to,
an
I don't remember what podcast that was. It was some podcast about some new thing, and they were speaking about climate crisis. It's like, is that an American thing? No, sorry, but it
yeah.
actually is not. Yes, the US is a major contributor for sure, you know, possibly
Yeah,
the biggest contributor,
yeah,
but it's still, you know, yes, we have to, meaning Americans have to do something. I'm going, no. It's like, no, actually, no.
everybody.
Everybody, yeah, if there's anything to do, alluding to our last conversation, you know, about maybe there is no fixing to be done, but there's a lot
Well,
of stuff to stop doing.
yeah, yeah. Uh, that yeah, it's the climate crisis is tricky, and
It's tricky
I
business, yeah.
can I can definitely see, yeah, coming from an American perspective, just because it is possibly the largest polluter, uh, and also to your point before about, you know, why do I know these things? Cultural exporting is, I think, something that's happened a lot, where it's uh, well, we've either physically or economically invaded other countries and
Yeah.
spread the culture there. And so I think that maybe there is an idea that I think is not necessarily a bad one, that if we can set an example, or if we can make a change happen here, that that might have a ripple effect in other places that are um, touched by U.S. influence, is maybe the way I'll put it.
Yeah.
um, but at the same time, yeah, it is tricky, because it's like it is beyond just the U.S. There are other places that are high level polluters, um,
Yeah.
and then
I'm
there's the
gonna
whole
see if I
question.
can find a little blurb that in my Buddha's thread. Oh yeah, wait, here it is. Wasn't so far. Um, I read a piece on how the New York Times was shifting their stance on victory in the Ukraine, Russian war,
Mm.
whatever. And I read it and I went, oh, how? It's like I get frustrated. I'm not surprised. It's like, you know, I get kind of, yeah, there we go again type feeling, because it was written from the standpoint where the US just cannot accept that country X would do Y, you know, or Z or W. It's like, no, we can't accept that. I'm going, but your country, that other place, it's a country. There's a government, there's somebody in charge, there's people, there's voting, maybe not altogether kosher voting, but I would say the US, altogether not kosher voting necessarily, right? It's like, but no, we can't have them do that. We can't accept it. And I'm going, isn't it absolutely fascinating, this
World police
way of
attitude.
being in the world? And it's like, I mean, you can, you know, I raise my hand and say that I've kind of been that way locally at home, where it's like you have to fold the towels my way. right? And it is that, but on a global country scale. And it's just, oh, this is so, I get kind of dejected, and then I get fascinated, and then I get confused, and I'm pondering, it's a whirlwind of emotions.
Yeah. And it's worth pointing out that, we did not do exactly what Russia has done, but we don't have a lot of moral ground to
No,
say don't do that
no,
because we have done that for
yeah.
we've done a light version of this in many places for the last 100 years.
Yes,
So,
yes. And I'm not so sure it's
uh,
even light versions, honestly.
well, it could be significantly worse. And
Yeah,
Yuval Noah Harari did have a good point that, like, okay, so the U.S. was particularly brutal in Iraq and Afghanistan,
yeah,
but they also weren't necessarily trying to redraw the borders of the country and assimilate it and make them Americans, which you could argue is worse, because then at least in becoming, an America, like a part of America, then you are, what is left of the benefits as far as like protection and welfare goes, like you could get that. But I mean, yeah, that's not necessarily even a good place to be. Just if you look at other U.S. territories that are like, hey, we'd kind of like statehood, and it's like, no,
sorry,
no
but
thanks.
no, no,
You're not into the club.
no,
Sorry, we've irreversibly changed your country, but you can't have those benefits.
no.
You can't have a full benefit ship. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
but
Yeah. It's fascinating.
America, world police, we're
Which is, which,
cops.
yeah, precisely. Which is also interesting because Sweden has also had, you are the world cop, and we have been the world conscience. Sweden has been the world
Mm.
conscience. Maybe Sweden still is. I don't really know that, but we sure were, 70s, 80s, 90s. Oh, yes, because Swedes, moral high ground. It's like, okay, whatever. It's like, it is, yeah. And this, we know best, It's like, yeah, because I see that, I know that my thoughts, my beliefs, that's the good ones. It's like, oh man, the hubris. It's like,
Yeah,
geez.
yeah, and that can definitely be a state thing, but can also be a religious thing too.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
think and it's interesting. Sweden is the most. I think at least it's known as the most secularized country in the world, basically. Maybe there are, but we really are to such a large extent that is almost a religion in itself. It's like it kind of turns into a belief system, which is incidentally what a religion is. It's a belief system. It's like
a
that's
way of
what it
being,
is, right?
shared cultural norms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, yes, we are secularized, and well, we've kind of gone religious. And yeah. It's an interesting, it's an interesting thing to see. And just across the waters in Denmark, they are so much less world conscious than Swedes are. They are much more cool and calm. It's like it's fascinating to see the difference, because they just look at us and go, man, you're uptight. And it's like, yes, that's Swedes. We're uptight to boot, generalizing heavily.
Yeah, but maybe there's some truth.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean. As with most cliches and whatnot, it's like yes, there is a truth underneath it. It might not be the full picture, but it's part of the picture for sure. And I mean, it's not helped by the fact that Sweden was a grand state and we owned Denmark and Norway and Finland, and
Oh,
we were Big Brother. Let's put it that way.
oh, that
That
makes a
kind of
lot more
helps.
sense now.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
You did not. Oh, you need to do some Googling on the history
I
of
need to do
Sweden. I can
some.
hear
I
this.
do.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
do.
no, we were one of the big states in Europe, but it's a long time ago, I say. But I
Yeah.
mean, Denmark and Norway, I don't know, somewhere was Norway turned their own in 1905 or something. I mean, it's not, there might still be someone alive, from before that.
Mm.
So it's not ancient times.
Yeah, my because of my own personal history, I'm a lot more aware of like uh people from Norway going into Ireland and uh and Scotland and influence there. So I was not
Yeah,
aware of that.
yeah,
So yeah, I have to
yeah,
learn a bit more about that. But that yeah, that's interesting that there is yeah, that similar holdover from being a large state that controls a lot of territory and can say this is how to do things, and
yeah,
we know best,
yeah,
and
yeah,
these ways are the better ways.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's a lot of that around still. I've gotten better at not being that way. And I say deliberately, I say I've gotten better at not being that way because it is it is putting myself on high horses. It's like it is valuing me more than other. It is a diminishing of others and of their self-worth, selfhood in a way. It's like, yes, you're a person, you're an individual, but I know better than you. Pat, pat, pat on the head. No, it's really not. Nah.
yeah,
Nah.
well, yeah, I mean, good company then, because I am working on that with myself too.
Yeah.
Um, where it's like, well, yeah, sometimes it's easier to see things when you don't have a vested stake
Yeah.
in terms of like what a what you think might be a better choice to make, but there's also a piece that you'll never understand if you don't try that way of being that the other person is in that you're looking down on.
Yeah.
And I would say in the past 6 months to a year started getting better at that, at going, well, do I like, is this the best way? Does this one, routinely lead me to being regularly happier? Um, I don't know if I can say that. And do I really know if I haven't tried another way of being?
So that was one of the things. I was listening to you and Eyal in deep dive on pain. And I enjoyed it. I actually jotted down 3-4 things. And I thought, ooh, I'd want to dig into these.
Ooh, I'm glad.
So anybody who's listening now
Ow.
is like, go listen to Deep Dive with Eyal and Luke on pain, and then you can come back here, because
I could
and
try to
this
give
is
an overview really quick, but
yeah. Well, you can give an overview really quick.
yeah, I could try. Yeah, just in case folks are not interested in, because it is like I
70
think,
minutes of you on pain.
yeah, right. So,
But it is
I
a
would.
good one. I'm just saying that it is
Oh,
worth listening
well,
to.
thank you.
Yes.
Yes, if you'd like to. So, um, hmm, the gist being, that I was socialized due to just the way it was growing up to be a helper, which is generally a good thing. Uh, but when you're a child and a helper, and then really even as an adult and wanting to be a helper, like you should have some form of support in that. It's very hard to put everything on hold for somebody else without some help from another person. You know, shared burdens really make it easier for everyone. But uh, got out of my depth in terms of landing in a light abusive friendship that was definitely both psychologically and physically, and don't know how related it is, but developed a chronic illness. Um, Tried to hide the chronic illness instead of like embracing it and recognizing, um, hey, the pain is actually information that your body is trying to tell you, and basically, the more that I listened to my body and the more that I listened to um, pain signals and tried to parse out, well, okay, what information is being conveyed here and what do I need to do in order to cease that, that is really something that has helped me a lot, both in terms of dealing with the chronic illness.
Wait just a second.
Sure.
Benjamin, would you mind just walking a little bit softer? Thank you. That was the elephant coming down the stairs.
Oh, well, our elephant's no longer with us. Our cat. She's not quiet coming down the stairs. But anyway, that's the gist. Basically, that with all the if I could universalize in any way, just that pain is generally a signal that contains information that is worth listening to and worth parsing and figuring out, well, what is it trying to tell me? Because if you figure that out, it's more likely that you're not going to have it again. So
that was one of the things. I also did an Eyal episode on tankespjärn, of course. And
yes,
he's really good at... He's good at kind of drawing conclusions or asking really interesting questions from like angles that, oh, I've never thought about that before. So he's super skilled at that. And he did that with you as well. Kind of curiously digging into, you know, what made you become so retrospective? What made you start to actually think and, you know, act on your insights that, I should make a shift here, otherwise headed down a path that's not gonna be so good for me. But so there were many things that I picked up on. One of them was just this: your way of saying it is different than my way of saying it, because you say that you're a helper, and you also say then in the podcast how you we're kind of left alone at that. And if you just help, you kind of burn out. And like you said now, being a helper, it's a good thing. You know, it is a good thing, but it needs to be balanced. And I think that's the way that I've phrased it for myself, is this thing that I am here to be at service. That is my way of phrasing that. And I have been at service to others. I'm here to help everybody else. And it's kind of the tagline, or the next part of that sentence has been at the expense of me.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the thing. That's no, we need to cut this off, take it away, turn it into something else, stop it, because that's the part that really gets you down that path of like, this is not a good way to continue. At the expense of me. No, we can't do it that way. And that's what it sounded like with you and your abusive friendship when you were 10.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, at the cost of you. It's like,
Yeah.
that's really not a good thing.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm still well, like last time we talked about inner voices.
Yeah.
I'm still picking out thorns where I will be like very hard on myself when I'm creating something, and or be feeling avoidant towards it, or like, I'm just having this overly judgmental attitude, and then I've stopped and gone, well, where does that come from? And oh, it's from that period of time when we were supposed to be working on this, we're writing this story together, and all of my contributions were being squashed. But he also didn't have any contributions, so it just didn't happen. So, things like that where it's like, oh, okay, so that's, I need to not listen to that voice, or I need to maybe put that voice in context where it's like,
precisely, and say that, hey,
to listen to.
Yeah, it's like, you can back down now. I don't need your assistance, actually.
Well,
right?
or like this is a critic who has not actually done for himself, so he doesn't really know how to critique. Yeah.
But one of the things that I was wondering, and you can say, no, I don't want to go there. I'm wondering at something that I experience for myself as well, which is this: you have this way of talking quite roundabout about your experiences. And from my point of view, it is because you're so careful not to have your mother or your father or your teacher or your friend or your whatever feel that you are in any way accusing them of, not doing the thing, or, so you're so careful in how you phrase your experience. And I pick up because you don't want anybody else who was there, who was a part or should have been a part, to like pick up on, oh, I didn't do my job, or I did a really shitty job as a mom or as a dad or as a teacher or as a friend or whatever, right? And I think that I pick that up because I'm quite conscious of that myself.
You also tiptoe.
Exactly. And somebody was telling me, my friend Laura Tucker, who is writing her biography, because she has an interesting story. She's been diving into quite a lot of this, writing your own like biography and your own memories. It's like, it is yours. You actually don't have to do the tiptoeing. You can own your stuff. And I go, yes, but it's like, how?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, because I've written stories now in my deep dive into shame. I've written about memories or my experiences now of finding a little child within me where my mom wasn't there for the child. And it's like, I know my mom was there for me, but not all the time, actually, because that is a valid experience that I had. I know she didn't do it to spite me. I know she didn't do it out of malice. I know she loves me. It's like all of that. And it's still there. Right? But
Yeah.
how do I put this out into the world, or do I have to wait until everybody who knows me is dead? It's like that's a really bad idea too, right?
Oh, oh, that's that's really funny. But that's also but it's funny, as we're saying, because there's some truth to the attitude, or to that attitude, um in having that. Yeah, um hmm, I don't know if there's necessarily a good answer to that. I am trying to get better at going, well, no, this was my experience, and owning that, um and being less concerned. But at the same time, it's also like I'm closer to my family, and more invested in their well-being and in their development than maybe teachers or friends. So I feel a little bit freer in being critical. Having the conversation, in part of, I think, why I waited so long to appear on the podcast was because I did want to wait until the frustration and anger was farther away, was not so close, just because I mean, I have had conversations directly with them that have been accusatory,
Mm.
and they've really gone in circles. And like I talked about in the podcast, it was like a lot of what I got was like, well, you need to understand like the context of what we were going through, and you need to understand our experience, not just as like at the time, but also how our childhoods were, and what was imparted on us. And that's not exactly how they were explained. It was a lot more like, well, but you're angry, but here's my defense.
Mm.
It was not done in this sort of empathetic way. uh but at the same time, like, I have identified some of their like inner voices and inner critics, and I found that it's like, well, it if I do want them to change, and if I do want them to be better, it doesn't really, like, being angry and accusatory and putting them on the defensive doesn't really serve to like have them make that progress. It really, they I mean, what really has to happen is they have to come to terms with their own experience first. And so I yeah, I was careful in telling those stories, just because I know that they will probably listen to the podcast at some point. Um and yeah, I think that the last thing that they need is someone um putting some of their most difficult times on display, and just dragging them through the mud. And it's like, well, even though, you know, maybe a year ago, if I had done that conversation, that's what I would have done. But
Mm.
I've gotten a lot better at recognizing, like, well, it could always be worse. It could always be a
Yeah,
lot
and
worse. Um,
in a sense, I think that this is what
um,
going to therapy has done for me. This round of therapy is this. It's a little bit too easy for me to see to be empathetic with everybody involved. It's a little bit too easy for me to see the context, to see the reasons why, to rationalize, oh, but this person did that because of this and that and their parents. And, it's like, which kind of leaves me in a state where I'm not letting myself feel the feelings of being abandoned, of being, ignored, of being shouted at being named, had labels put on me. Oh, you're this. You're always like this. It's like,
Oh, those are awful.
it's so easy for me to go up into my head and intellectualize all of that and just totally calmly see that, oh yeah, I know precisely why mom or dad or granny or anybody did the thing. But there's still, the 5-year-old me or the 7-year-old me or the 13-year-old me or the 30-year-old me for that matter, who actually experienced and felt. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of those feelings weren't, if anything, that's probably what I can see if I look back at my life. It's like I wasn't helped to feel the feelings, to express the feelings in a safe way, to let that out. So that it doesn't stick. Instead, it's like, okay, put the lid on. Yeah, we all know what happens then, right? So I'm gently... Pressure builds. And it's like, yeah. So I'm gently excavating these pressure cookers inside of me and letting them out. And I am, when I'm in therapy, the amount of grief-stricken tears is like, man, I have been grieving so much, kind of for the different me's of different times that just did not have a context where I could let it out so that I wouldn't have to stay within me in the way that it has. So it's so easy to rationalize. And then, So somewhere for me, it's been really helpful. And I've told Dominic that it's as if I've really come into contact with that grief in the last year. It started in May last year. We started the therapy in November of 2020 or October 2020. 2020, yes. So in May 2021, grief suddenly appeared on the scene. I was like, grief? What's that? And it's like, yeah, that's why she's here now, because you have not been letting her take the stage. So she's really taking the stage, but she's really taking the stage in therapy. Mm-hmm. So somehow it's like that's a place where she knows that she can come. And she won't be shunned, she won't be shamed, she won't be belittled, she won't be, away with you, little thing. We don't need you here. It's like none of that. It's just, okay, you're welcome here. We'll hold you while that grief just pours out of me. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of film, have you seen the movie Parasite?
No.
Oh, okay. It won the Oscar 2 years ago.
I have not seen
wobbly.
any new movies in the past.
Okay.
Well, years.
I really identified with the dad in the film. I'll just say this. Try not to spoil it, but basically, after college, it was recognizing that I have not been well, at the time, it's much more self-flagellating. I've been bad and I need to check myself into jail, basically.
Yep.
But but that kind of thing where, and now I kind of see it's more like, well, I don't like the path that I'm internally going down, and I need to go into a different period. Like I need to, well, in that case, spend like a year or two just not going out, and it didn't. Well, what helped that was having uh, raging C. diff infection, and um, which has happened several times. Basically, just being very ill for like 3 years, and so it was like, well, I'm just gonna spend this time at home in therapy. Um, and it definitely took a while before that started happening, but I have been going through some of that processing as well. And part of what has really helped is, I have a lot of criticisms, but there are some cool things that my parents have done, and one of them is my mom saved basically all of the artwork I ever did. Um, and going and finding this stuff from when I was like, you know, 4, 5, 6, 7, and looking at it, because that was a really quick way that it was like, oh, I saw exactly what was happening.
Yes. Oh.
I I knew exactly what was happening, and that was a big part of opening the grief doors, was like,
Yeah.
um oh yeah, so here's our family, and I am the pet.
Yeah.
um Stuff like that, where symbolically, and just really cool things that you just like like where does that come from, like, um this, because in that thing of where like I'm being treated like a pet, there's this stuff happening in the background, and like uh there's on one side like boats, and on the other side there's like tanks and stuff, and it's like, oh, well, one of my grandfathers was in the Navy in World War II, and one of my grandfathers was in the trenches, but nobody ever told me that. So it's just cool
It's
to see some
there.
of that stuff, that it's like, how do I, like I could see it back then, even when I was 4.
Yeah.
um but that also gave me definitely like a respect for this self, that it's kind of like I like, it's like I lost the ability to see all these things as I became socialized, and um but yeah, I mean, when because I was not born in the city that we moved to, and I spent most of my time growing up in, and around the time that I left, yeah, it was kind of crazy. There's like prophetic stuff that's like, you're gonna, um, yeah, that just describe like the personal journey that I've like been on, and it's wild.
But that you
It's
hadn't been on. You had yet to
I had yet
get
to be
on it.
on,
Yeah,
but
precisely.
somehow subconsciously
Yeah.
I could see that like it was gonna happen. So
Yeah.
I
But
will never
isn't
understand.
that kind of partly the so did we speak about the difference between civilization and culture last time? No, that was with somebody
No.
else, I think. Matthew and Emma and me and other people in our creative community have been speaking about this, and we've been speaking a lot about, really originally it comes from like the market economy versus gift culture, how those are kind of two different states, and that actually gift culture is there all the time. Imagine if we took away everything that you're gifted, which would mean there would be no air to breathe, because that's a gift from trees and algae and stuff, and there would be nothing to eat, because that's really a gift from the soil and the microbes and the bees and the other pollinators and the sun. And it's like, when you start to think about it, it's like gift culture is here. And then we've this thin veneer of market economy on top of it that we kind of think is the real deal. But that is also kind of the difference between civilization and culture. And culture then meaning, we speak a lot about sourdough and fermentation and stuff. It's like, that's the type of culture. It's like, so that civilization is this thin veneer that we've put atop of culture to try to contain it and, make it more controlled and not wild and go off on crazy tangents. And, it's like,
Try to
stay
fix
here.
it.
So this, I think, is what you were now describing. The little kid that was you is that culture. And we see, and we hear, and we pick up, and kids know who's, if there's something going on in the room, a kid will know. We pick it up. And then we start to put on this thin veneer that is civilization, socializing people into, this is how you behave. You are to ignore the pain. You are to, kiss.
Now your awareness.
Yes, precisely. It kills the awareness, and the awareness is in that culture. It's there. It's alive. It's like this thing. So the like cracking the veneer, and then, like you also said in the pod with Eyal, trying to heal the generational traumas, or at least stopping it or minimizing it by doing what you can do so that it kind of heals backwards. And then my kids will pick on something else. It will not be the handed down stuff. It will have, maybe it's turned into a little scrap and they still have the scrap in their pocket, right? But it's not the coat that they're wearing because it's been dealt with and kind of let go of, in a sense. It can it can go up into atoms and turn into something else, and right.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. Yeah, it can be transformed. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is
ahead.
what is like, imagine what can happen if we are allowing ourselves to kind of stay in the culture aspect of it and kind of not put on the veneer that's civilized, socialized, norm based or controlled. This is how to do it and this is not how to do it. Okay. It's like, maybe
In that framework, I'm curious what your thoughts are about the way in which and yeah, it's a question, is it culture or is it civilization, or is it some type of both of it? But I depending on which like where you hear it from, like either I fall into the millennial or the zoomer category. I feel more like a millennial than a zoomer.
what's a zoomer? That's a new word.
Born after 2001
Oh,
was I
wow.
think was what I heard, and then it's apparently been changed to be 1997 and after. I
And then you don't know
I think
anymore.
it's depending on who you ask, but it mutates and change, and the norms change so quickly that it's really hard for others, like who are not terminally online, to pick up on it. Um, and
Terminally online is a really good way of putting it,
oh,
actually.
I love that phrase. Um, yeah. and yeah, I think it's just almost a little scary how it feels like the cultural changes are just happening faster and faster and faster, and I don't know if that is a reaction to the civilizational control
Mm.
mechanism, that it's like, well, if we can create our own thing that the establishment doesn't have the ability to follow or harness or co-opt, um, we'll be free. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, and we're talking about like something nebulous, so it's not like there necessarily is intentional or intentionality
Mm.
behind it. Um,
But yeah, and I zoom out like the long arcs of time and go Daniel Quinn Ishmael inspired on this, where it's civilizations that fall. When there's been crashes, it's been civilizations. The Inca and Mayan civilizations fell. The old Egyptian civilization, the old Greeks and the Romans and the Mongols, and it's like it's civilizations that fall. Whereas if you look into prehistoric times, which again I think is just the most idiotic phrase. It just means pre-recorded, right? I'm from my understanding is like there wasn't civilizational falls in that way. It was culture, and sure, cultures could shift. They probably shifted quite slowly, I'm guessing. But they did shift, and they probably did shift as people started to migrate, or climates changed, or now we've taken down all of the trees in England, or whatever it is, right? It's like, okay, we need to make a shift. But that, I think cultures there probably were both a much more consistent presence, where the individual or the yearly or the decade long like shifts were it's not an issue, because the thin veneer of civilization isn't there to be cracked from the inside, which would then crack the thing. It's like, so it couldn't be broken in the same way as civilization seemed to kind of run through a much more clear cycle of, on the ruins of a civilization, a new civilization is born, and then it struggles, and then it reaches a peak, and then it starts to dwindle, and then it crashes, and then a new civilization is born, which I think is a much more modern inslag, we say in Swedish. It's a modern insertion, it's a modern ingredient in human history that is what, 300,000-400,000 years, or
so
humanoid history.
are we? So we're talking still like settled peoples in the sense that like they are agrarian, or are we talking still
No,
roving bands?
I'm further back. Even though agrarian is interesting, because agrarian didn't necessarily mean settled back in the days. The agrarian
Mm.
revolution had us settle, like in one place, and start to grow and farm. Before that, there's been agriculture, but it's been this, oh, I'll toss these seeds here, and then we'll
Uh,
go off there for the summer. And when we come
to where we
back,
toss the other seeds.
Yes, we toss
Um,
those there before we leave for back here again. It's like
mm,
so we have been agrarian, but not in the way that we have for the past 10,000 years. So I'm looking because I think that is where these civilizations really started to become a thing. Before that,
is
I
the settled is in
before
settled.
that is the culture. Before that it was
Mm,
culture. You had human cultures. You had your tribes and your whatnot. But it was yeah, that control aspect wasn't there somehow.
hmm. So then would we define civilization if that is kind of growing from the settled bit? Um, is civilization then in part like the institutions that are born of that they are entities that are like they are made and maintained by humans, but they are not human, like
Yeah.
banking systems and
Yeah. And they kind of take
libraries
on a
and
life of their own in the
yeah,
way that things
yeah.
do. And I think they
Does it
really
serve the
help.
people or do the people serve it?
Exactly. And I think that's when the
Um,
downfall of civilizations start, when the systems that we've put in place to help us, to serve us, no longer serves us. We have to serve them. That's when the downfall starts. And
mm,
then it just cracks into pieces because we don't change the systems enough. We don't change the institutions enough. We don't ensure, we don't like bring them home to look at them to see, is it still serving us? We don't do that nearly
mm.
enough. And if we do that, I think we do it on an extremely superficial level, thinking here and now, and maybe the next 4 years, because that's how long I will be in power. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
problem. Culture, the stuff that was, 10,000 years ago and before that, I don't even know if they had that sense of time. It was just
Yeah.
there, right? You just live. So you don't abuse or extract or like take in the way that we do today.
Because yeah, we got to do all we can because in 4 years we might not be able to. We might have to stop for another 4 years. So yeah, that's a good point. Um, and that yeah, with culture, when you are very maybe it's the connection to not having another system to serve other than your elders and your children, and that maybe um, the motivation is taking actions that are going to help them and yourself in the current moment, but you don't need to overdraw because that might hurt
Yeah,
your chances later on, but also their
yeah.
ability for survival. So, well, that's kind of an answer to a question maybe that was posed um, in our last conversation.
What
That
question
was
was that?
how do you um, how do you set priorities that are different or like how do you have a like what can motivate people other than the reward of resources? Um, that wasn't the exact phrasing of it, but something to that effect. That was like, how do you set a priority to reward things other than, well, I'm avoiding saying profit because resources can also be the case in other places
Yeah,
where it's
yeah,
you know maybe I'd rather have food than I'd have money because I can get a better deal if it's just food or land or whatever. But but then that's the topic of legacy, kind of. um, whether that's children or versus
Yeah, and I mean, you were touching on that
institution.
too in the podcast with Eyal, where he was mentioning his grandmother who came
Yeah, that's a
to
crazy story.
Israel and like basically built a kibbutz, you know,
Yeah.
on her own, starting on her own, a
Well,
rock at a time.
with her friends, but
Yeah, but it's like that's a
yeah,
legacy. Yeah, it is. But and again, there comes the thing of the comparison. Is that a better legacy than,
yeah,
it's like, and then when you go down that rabbit hole of comparing instead of contrasting, which is me and Steve talking about that one of the episodes of last season. The difference between comparing and contrasting. It's like where comparison brings with it judgment. It's better or worse. It's gooder or badder. It's on a scale where comparison is rather you just look at them and you just notice the difference in texture or smells or flavors or lengths or paintings or it's like it's just different. You don't have to on a scale of I like this better than that. You can just see that, oh, here's two things that can be a legacy, but I don't
yeah.
have to weigh them against each other and judge them as being this one is much better than that one. It's like, no, they
Or
are.
is yeah, or is mine enough?
Yes. Yeah. Do you think of legacy?
Uh, yes. And no. So yes, in the sense that I do like to think about what could I do that would leave a good legacy. And I've definitely spent time daydreaming like, well, this is a path that I could go down and I could spend a whole bunch of time doing this. I could get this education to then, go tackle this issue. Um, and I've kind of tried to stop doing that because it feels rather tiring because it is that sort of compare contrast because it's like, well, this is where I'm at because it can be kind of demoralizing. Like, well, this is where I'm at right now. And this is so far away from this idea. It's also an idea, it's not necessarily something in practice. And ideas tend to be cleaner than
Practice.
implementations.
Yes.
Um, and so I would say that I'm trying to get better at going, well, I am not gonna think about that necessarily all the time, but more like, well, I want to spend my time doing things that I enjoy and that I will be proud of. And in aggregate, I hope that'll be enough. So, um, uh, yeah. So I've definitely been in a uh, place in the last 3 months of going, well, here's this very elaborate idea um, for a personal project that I'm working on, and going, well, I lack the resources and skill to make that happen in the way that it is in my head right now. So I'm going to do something that is different, but is still something I enjoy and is still something that I can be proud of and that could be a stepping stone to being able to do that. But I'm not going, well, and of course, sitting here talking with you right now, it's easy for me to say, oh yeah, yeah, it's fine, it's enough. But give me like catch me on another day, and it might be like the hand wringing, like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I should do more.
um, but but yeah, but at the moment it's like, well, I've really recognized that it's more valuable to take the first step, um, and to do something than it is to, uh, well, and I'm not to say I'm doing nothing, but to do stuff that is the completion of other people's visions, because that is what I do, to pay the bills is,
Mm.
help with other people's stuff, which is can be part of legacy too, being a
Yeah.
really, really excellent helper at
Yeah.
creating a vision. Um, but yeah, as far as things that are pure personal expression, it's like, well, we have to start somewhere, so better to start, um, small and imperfectly, and learn lessons from that. Um, and then we'll see. We'll see about some of the loftier stuff, and part of this is definitely internal, but also I do have to thank VisaCon, his rules for entrepreneurship, about fail small and fail often,
Mm.
and just do, because that is how you learn, is by failing, really. Um, but don't fail in a very big, expensive way. Do it in
At
smaller
least not
ways.
without a network that can kind of catch you when you fall, or a safety
Well,
net.
yeah. So
No.
it's a long answer, but yes and no.
Yeah.
um, what about you?
Well, I think I did a lot of the loftier things when I was younger, up into my 30s. It was like I was like I'm gonna, or at least when I was late teens, early 20s, it was like, oh, I'm gonna win the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm gonna, or not Peace Prize, Nobel Prize of Medicine or something. I'm gonna invent the cure for the common cold, or it's like wanting really to. And I've had lofty thoughts as far back as 10 years, whereas I started, where I was one of the catalysts for this movement in Sweden called Skolvåren, the school spring, asking why school, where I had a goal that I stated to myself. It's like, I want to change, I want to help change the educational systems throughout the globe. It's like, so I've done my fair share of lofty, but really probably since 2015 or 16 or something, I've brought that home, where no, I don't need to. I don't feel that urge. I don't feel the need to catalyze change in those big, huge, humongous system paradigm ways. Um, and perhaps in one way, taking it home means that I am leaving a legacy, in the sense of the people that I'm touching, the people that I'm, relating with, the people that I come into contact with, and how I am, and how I show up, and how I embrace, and how I challenge, and so. And I do so enjoy seeing tankespjärn as a concept take on and just spread. It's like it's really rippling out. Mostly in Sweden, but not only in Sweden. There's more other people here doing work to spread it, but I mean, it is spreading. I see the word. And I hear it used from, or I hear of it being used from, it's like, so those kind of, what is it, 6 degrees of separation or 5 degrees of, it's like, it isn't just me influencing directly anymore. It's those people who are influencing others, and maybe even those people who are influencing others. So maybe that's a legacy.
Rippling. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that I learned about that I think is interesting is the concept of DNA methylation, and that so like yeah, you can change people. You can change the way that their traits can present,
Yeah.
and so you can leave a legacy in that
Yeah.
regard too.
Yeah.
Um, it it ripples. It all ripples.
Yeah, precisely. And I think that is, if anything, I think that is where I've kind of landed, in a sense that it does ripple. What I do ripples, and what I don't do ripples. Right? How I show up ripples, how I don't show up ripples. It's like it is. It's like positive and negative space in a sense. It's like there's the things I do, but then there's the stuff I don't do. That's kind of the negative space on a painting or something. It's like those could be really, really impactful as well. What do I put my focus on? How am I addressing people, and when and why? And when don't I? It's like all of that, ripples, because it just, we are so connected in a sense. Like, again, this is culture, right? This is that sourdough culture. Like, I actually took out my sourdough starter from the fridge this morning because I was, or maybe even last night. I took it out last night and I fed it some rye flour and some water and stirred, and then put it on the counter. And this morning before I went out, I put in 2 more scoops of flour and some more water and stirred it. And then when I got home, it had actually overflowed. It was like there was probably 4 centimeters left to the top of the jar when I left it this morning, but it's overflowed. So I had to like woof over into a bigger container. But it's like that is that culture. That is, I'm really, I like being in contact with something that is so apparently alive, but is so different from me. I don't feel like this jar of bubbly flour and water, right? But it's like, but actually, we're not that different,
Yeah. Yeah, I like it's kind of like a physical metaphor that the cup is overflowing, and well, I don't know if you cleaned it up and gave it to somebody else, but I was going to say, but the idea being like the cup overflows, so so you share. So yeah.
So this is what I actually will be doing, because I'm having an open house on Saturday, when it's my birthday on Friday next week. We're recording this
happy
on the
birthday.
10th. Yes. So I'm having an open house, and I had a birthday bash for closest family on Sunday, and I had some of my sourdough crackers that I'd been speaking about to my family earlier in the weekend, and they were like, "Oh, can we taste it?" It's like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I have a few. I'll put them out," and they were gone because they're so yummy. So that's what I'll be doing for the open house. The invitation reads, "Bring something," because I'm not bringing. I'll make sure there's drinks. Then you guys have to bring the rest, whatever that will be. So bring something. But I will make some sourdough crackers because they seem to really be enjoyed, and I sure enjoy them. So yes, I will pass it on in a sense.
Woo!
Yeah.
And sourdough is a good example of something to leave as a legacy because it doesn't mold. So durable. That's a durable.
Durable. Yes.
And with the talk last time of microbiome, it may live on.
Yeah. Yeah. It does. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's like that is really what the last year and a half or two, maybe, I really picked up on the impact and import of fermentation. We are meant to eat
good stuff.
fermented stuff.
And
It's
it's
like
good.
that is what we're supposed to do because it just, again, the fermentation, it's a life force that just woof. All of a sudden you have these fantastic microbiome that helps your gut. And you have these nutrients that are just wonderful. And you break down the stuff that is not so good for us. So, I mean, industrialized bread compared to real sourdough bread, they don't live in the same universe. You know, it's like on completely different levels. It's not the same thing. Even though you can have water, flour, and salt. Right? That can be the basis of both of them. Still, it's so far apart.
We could definitely go down a rabbit hole about the havoc that food scientists have wreaked on our society. Just I know because having Crohn's disease has meant that I have a very sensitive monitor for like, oh, red dye 40, can't have anything with that. You know, oh, carrageenan or like emulsifiers, can't have anything with that. And they did find that if you feed a guinea pig carrageenan for like 2 months, it will develop IBD.
That's so interesting.
So
And IBD, for those who don't know, means?
when your immune system decides that your intestinal lining is an invader and needs to be attacked in the same way that like diabetes is that for the pancreas and multiple sclerosis is for the nerve sheath. I drink 1 to 2 gallons of water a day because it helps a lot. So that also means that I'm
It has to come out.
on the way to the restroom. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, food is interesting. I've been on a journey of food since 99 when I separated from my then husband, who was like, I don't like beans and lentils and stuff, and I love beans and lentils and stuff. So when he went out the door, in came the beans and the lentils. And since then, it's like I've really gone further and further away from the industrialized foods, from processed foods, I do buy flour, but I don't buy flour with lots of additives and stuff. I prefer if it's ground on a stone, so that it's, it's like not so yeah, I do kind
You're
of
into it.
I'm into it and I enjoy it, and I've read and I've watched and stuff, and Michael Pollan's stuff. There was a series, I think, of 4 episodes of a food thingy he did a couple of years ago, where one is called, if they're called fire and air or earth and water, maybe. Those are really, really good. Because they speak precisely to this thing of bread, for instance.
Those were TV episodes?
Yes.
On Netflix?
I think they were on Netflix.
I think I saw it, but I haven't watched it. But I will have to give it
Those are,
again.
it's like they were really, again, because I kind of like his stuff. He's like basically saying, can eat anything as long as it's real food and you make it yourself. So he's like, okay, I want ice cream. Sure, make it yourself, because then it will be real stuff. And then you
Yeah.
won't eat too much of it either because you can't, because it's real stuff. So it actually does contain calories and all of that, right?
Well, and it is something that sounds easy, but it definitely takes time
Yeah,
to prepare. So
yeah,
so yeah, you're if you have to make it all yourself, then it's not it, it's difficult to just go and oh, I want more of this.
yeah, yeah,
Well, I
precisely.
have a whole
Yeah, it's
process
going to
that I
take
have
you three
to.
days
Yeah,
to make it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Which is like with my sourdough crackers. It's like it takes 2 days at least. I could do it in three as well, but it's like it doesn't go faster than that because I want it to ferment properly. I want the process to be active enough so that that transformational shift happens to the flour so it turns into this really, really good thing for you. But then Taleb, Nicholas,
Hmm.
whatever his name is,
Black Swan Man.
the Black Swan Man, precisely. And the Anti Fragile Man, which I really enjoyed more than Black Swan.
Uh,
Um, he's like,
I don't know about that one.
he's a weird ass man, I would say. Really intelligent, but kind of he has a way of being in the world that maybe not so fond of that. But a lot of what he brings up is tankesbjörn through and through. But he says, I
Got
don't
to
eat
get it to
any.
him.
Huh?
You got to get it to him.
Yes, I should. I should. I'll send him
There's a
this. But
word
maybe
for
that's a
this.
bad thing because I just said I don't really like him. So maybe I shouldn't send this episode to him.
Yeah. Yeah, just not this episode.
Just not this episode, no. But he says in Anti-Fragile, he speaks about food and he says basically he eats what has been around for 2,000 years or more. So it's like,
No Gogurt.
they had what?
No Gogurt.
No Go-Gurt, no Oatly, and no, fast food of any kind. It's like, what? And basically, not a lot of fruits. Most
Oh,
fruits, in the way that they are today, are really modern inventions. I mean, citrus has become this entire field of like a gazillion different types. It's like there were like sour little oranges around. It's like so he's like, okay, nuts and red wine and fish and it's like there's stuff that's been around. You can eat that. We're meant to eat that. Um, wine gums or you know Coca-Cola. No, we're actually not supposed to ingest that stuff. Um,
yeah. Yeah. And then there's a whole other aspect to this that is, unfortunate, and it is that it's a lot easier for people of means to access like real food
yeah.
than people who don't, and that could be a whole other rabbit hole of
Yeah.
um, it when you I mean historically you have, well, depends on how where you want to go, because in hunter gatherer, then both parents, well, really the whole tribe works to feed everybody,
Yeah.
but yeah, you have somebody who is or the wage earner and somebody who is the food preparer. Um, whether, I mean, there's the historic gender roles, but in like my family, that's actually been swapped. Um, but a job has to be able to pay enough that one person can earn enough wages for the whole family. And if that is not a reality and both parents have to work, and I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of effort left over for
Real food.
for making real food,
Yeah.
where it's, well,
And
yeah, just get McDonald's or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
So you then have been like forced to learn about food and what works for you.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I've had uh, a harsh teacher, but a very good teacher. um, where it goes, yeah, we don't like fried things. Well, we do really like fried things, but we don't like fried things. No, we don't like.
Yeah.
Um, I can't seem to get away from sausage, though. Maybe that's hereditary, though. I am part German, so.
But do you then do proper sausage? Which is
Well,
like basically meat and spices.
yeah.
Or do you do
Well,
the
I try
processed
to.
shit, which is like, well,
Try to.
if you're lucky, you have 50% meat, and then it's shit.
Yeah. I try to. But every once in a while I get tricked where, I'm in a hurry and I go to the store and grab something and I'm not label reading and it's like, why is there high fructose corn syrup in this?
In
'Cause that's
everything.
also something that is not good.
Yeah.
So
Tip
we
for
could-
everybody listening: if there's high fructose corn syrup in it, don't buy it. Don't eat it. Period. It does not matter what it is. You do not ingest it.
Yeah. Well, and at the beginning we're talking about the United. Oh, sorry, I bumped the table. In the beginning we're talking about the United States exporting stuff, and I think that's definitely something you could lay the blame at the U.S. for, because it's like, well, we've subsidized all this corn. We need to do something with it.
Yeah. Let's
Well, then we need to
highly
push it into
process it.
everything. Yeah, like, we need to push it into everything because we need to make a return on um, the money we put into the subsidies to grow it. So,
It's weird. One I'm just remembering, I was watching, this is probably 10, 15 years ago, there was some documentary being made about, maybe it wasn't that long ago, 10 years ago, where they were going around the world showing, like, diving into weird ass places where food choices really have a significant impact and not necessarily a positive significant impact. And they were in the Appalachian Mountains in the US, in some, tiny, tiny little village somewhere where nobody, it's like, it is really the part of the poorest parts of the US. Where it's like hardship, that's what you live. You live hardship. And there was this teen boy who was 17, who barely had any teeth in his mouth because he'd been drinking Mountain Dew. And his mom had put Mountain Dew in his, the little cup the sippy cup type thing. So he'd been, he had rotten teeth. That's probably what they were doing. They were going around helping people with tooth and teeth and diabetes and I don't know what not. But that was so shocking to see this young kid opening his mouth and he's like, what you see in like David Copperfield, the movie where there's a 70-year-old man, a beggar on the street with rotting teeth. It's like, but in a 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
It's like, that was such a shock to my system. And it's like, we live in such a weird ass world.
Yeah. Yeah. That. The U.S. is very weird in that way, that there are places that are, you can consider, and we're talking about civilization, the most civilized, and, and then just, it's like a third world country in certain parts, where it's just totally overlooked. But at the same time, when we're talking culture, that region, the Appalachians, I think was originally founded by Scottish criminals that they brought to the U.S. and went, I'm not going to stay in the colony. I'm going to run off to the Appalachians. And then this sort of we don't want to be part of, the rest of society.
We're not going to do it the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, which, I mean, when we were talking, it works when you're able to be self-sufficient and eat real food, and you're able to make it work. But yeah, when you have when all you have to drink is Mountain Dew, then that's not good. That's not great. That's biting you. That's biting you in a bad way.
Yeah, it's like shooting yourself in the foot and wondering why it hurts so much.
And I have to be careful though, because I have not been there. I don't really know the culture, but my sense is that it is very much we don't need help, kind of thing. So, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. I don't know how true that impression
is. Yeah.
is. But
Isn't Dolly Parton from there?
I don't know.
I was thinking about Dolly Parton earlier when you were saying, you were speaking about, who were you speaking about? You were saying that people don't, the David Lynch, it's like the Twin Peaks. You were saying that, everybody on the political spectrum can go, oh yeah, he's with me. Dolly Parton is like that.
I really like her, yeah.
It's so funny because I've grown up really not liking her because my dad likes her, and it's like, then I just went, no, I don't do country. And then my oldest is totally into it and her, and I'm going, what? So there's some generational gap going on, but there's a really, really good podcast series about Dolly Parton.
I should listen.
I will send you the link to that because that one it's awesome. It's so well made. And I did read, if it was her book before that, and I'm just going, I'm impressed by her.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like when because I've never gone past the surface. It's like gigantic hair, lots of makeup, big boobs, and this flimsy bimbo style. It's like I've never gone past it. I've just gone shutting the door, saying no, thank you. I don't do that stuff. But if you go past that, wow, she's impressive. And that podcast is really, it's done by the son of a medical doctor who she's friends with. And he works for NPR or something, the son. So it's really well made. And she is also one of those people where she doesn't speak politics. And I think she does it very, very deliberately, because she's one of few artists that you can vote for whoever you want. You can be a member of whatever political party, and you can like Dolly Parton. So at her gigs, people meet. You meet everybody. It's like there's not, this is just for the push people, or this is just for the Republicans, or it's like you get all of it, which is like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I have listened to some of her music, but it is like, um, hmm, I like her more for the character aspect of like, oh, starting at least one very successful charity, and um, you know, holding her own in a
Yeah,
very misogynistic field,
yeah.
and
I'm
yeah,
really
being very
running
good.
the show.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and being good,
Nobody
very good
else
at
is
what she
running that
does.
show but her.
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
is so prolific. She's one of the most prolific songwriters around. The amount of number one hits that she has written, but you have no clue because she's not the one performing it, is just wow. So it's like, she's like a modern day Mozart, which really is like, oh, that feels so weird to say when I don't really like the music. But, she's
Yeah.
extremely productive, extremely skilled. So, yeah, I'm impressed.
She's my anima.
Possibly, yeah. Well, I mean, she's not a bad role model to have around, for sure. But yeah, and I think she is from the Appalachians. She grew up dirt poor, and they were living in basically a little hut somewhere up in the mountains.
Mhm. That's hard. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, maybe
Yeah.
that's where we end. We end with Dolly Parton. We started with, what did we start with?
American
Food.
cultural export?
American culture, and
Maybe?
then we end with Dolly Parton. What a perfect way to kind of knit it
Hey,
all together
full
into a neat
circle.
little package, right?
Kind of. Good
So,
enough.
what was the point we
Okay.
were trying to make? Go figure. Who knows?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. My last point was good enough, so then maybe that's yeah,
Yeah,
good enough. Full circle.
good enough, full circle. Yeah. Well, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. And I will link to
Likewise.
the Eyal Deep Dive pod so that everybody who wants to can go check that out
Sounds
as
good.
well. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So, see you around.
All right. Yeah. See you for conversation 3.
Yes. And that's like halfway. Next is halfway. How is it possible that it can go so quickly?
I don't know. I'm in a time warp just because of a lot of life event things that have happened. So it both feels very quick but also very slow somehow at the same time. And not
Cool.
just that, but lots of other things
Cool.
too. So
That's a good place to be in, though. So, you enjoy.
yeah, you too.